Welcome to all of you here to this Dean Speaker Series. My name is Rich Lyons. I'm the Dean of the Business School here, the Haas School at UC Berkeley. I welcome all of you tonight. I'm just as pleased as can be to introduce our guest, which I will in just a moment. He was a student of mine. I want to take full credit for all that he has achieved. And there are others that will take full credit for all that he has achieved. I want to also introduce you to our upcoming speaker in this same series. Next Tuesday, it will be Janet Yellen. So Janet Yellen was on our faculty for many, many years. She's now a professor emeritus of the Haas School. She is, as you know, vice chair of the Federal Reserve in a hugely important role. And every time we turn around, she's got an even more important role. So I don't have any inside information about what her next role will be, but she's in a very important seat right now. She will be speaking at 12:30 p.m. on Tuesday, November 13th. And because we want to make sure to accommodate as many people as possible, we're doing that one in Chevron Auditorium at the International House, which, as you know, is just right down the street, right? So hopefully you can be there at 12:30 on Tuesday. Tonight, we all have the great pleasure of getting a chance to hear Patrick Awuah. Patrick is one of our alums, as I mentioned, a path-bending leader, if ever there was one. This is somebody that when he was here, he had an unflappable vision, and it was clear to him when he was here. And we'll hear more about that. But he wanted to start a university in Ghana, his native country. After graduation, he went back to Ghana and started a university. He brought some of his classmates with him. As clear a vision as any you could imagine. His work has been inspirational to many, many people. He has won many, many different awards. I won't be able to go through all of them. He won the John P. McNulty Prize of the Aspen Institute. This is an award that recognizes extraordinary, high-impact young leaders who are making creative and lasting contributions to their community. In May 2010, Patrick was named the 8th most respected CEO in Ghana, and that same year was listed as one of the 100 most creative people in business by Fast Company. Recently, he became a fellow of the Africa Leadership Initiative, a branch of the Aspen Global Leadership Network. Friday evening at our own Haas Gala, this is where we bring all of our alums together, Patrick will be receiving yet another award, a very deserving award. We have something called the Leading Through Innovation Award, and if anybody deserves that award, it is Patrick. Each year we recognize an alum with that award, and we are absolutely delighted that Patrick not just won, but that he's here with us, and that's so important. And he also agreed to do this talk tonight, which we also appreciate. Look, I can go on and on. I think the pictures are worth so many more words. We've got a little video for you to introduce Patrick, and we'll kick off the video right now, and then we'll bring Patrick up. Okay, so let's start the video. Thanks.
Ashesi as a project to help drive a renaissance in Africa. So I became a parent and I started to worry more about the world we would leave for our children and their children. And I decided that education was the way to help achieve that. I went to Haas looking for an education that would teach me about how organizations function and that I would use that knowledge to found and run a university in Ghana.
Ashesi is a different type of school, apart from like all schools in Ghana. The number in class, very little. You actually have a personal relationship with your lecturers. The facilities over here are amazing. You get to know all your classmates on a personal level.
Most students, when they enter Ashesi, they're coming from a system that relies very heavily on learning by rote. And they enter a college that is more about critical thinking and problem solving and values.
This school is not just about a place where you go and get a good job, but it is a lot about the mission of building ethical leaders in Africa.
Continuing students have an obligation to offer community service. So I think in the coming years, if our population increases, what's going to happen is that we're going to affect a lot more rural areas in Ghana.
My first experience with IBD was getting Ashesi started. We want to develop an institution that deepened and expanded its impact by really addressing other very high impact fields like engineering, economics, law, and society.
We especially love the chance to meet students and alums and hear about the impact that Ashesi has made on their lives.
I was consistently impressed by what people outside of the Ashesi community thought of and perceived of what Ashesi was trying to do.
Just getting to learn more about Ashesi and just how truly amazing an organization this is. It's just been a complete honor to work with you.
It's a very inspiring place, and really appreciate letting us have the opportunity to work with you.
You change a continent by changing the people in it and the leaders in it. This next century has to be the African century.
You change a continent by changing the people in it. Patrick, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It's always a real pleasure to be back at Haas. I remember when I first came here and got a chance to speak with the director of admissions. And she said to me, of all the admissions essays I've ever read, yours was the one that I thought was not going to happen. And so, these are the question, what did I put in my admissions essay? I talked in my Ashesi, in my Haas application about transforming a continent. I talked about, a young person in the tech industry who had just become a parent and who felt very strongly now a responsibility for the next generation of Africans. And that the way I was going to make that impact, that contribution in the world, was to set up a university that would educate a new generation of leaders on the continent. And I'd come to this conclusion that leadership is so important because of conversations that I had had with friends and family in Ghana before I quit Microsoft to do this. And actually, the reason I came to Haas, to Berkeley, was that I had this big idea, and I was frightened by it. I was utterly scared that I was leaving a career and setting off on a quest that had a very high chance of failure. And so it took me a year and a half after I had the full permission of my wife before I walked away from Microsoft. And so coming to Haas was really, in my mind, about managing my fear. And managing it by learning how organizations function and preparing myself for this mountain that I was about to climb. And so I came here and sort of encountered this community of people. Some of them thought my idea was crazy, but nobody said that to me. Everybody that I mentioned this idea to said, "What an amazing idea. It's so great that I came to this business school because I got to meet people like you, Patrick." And that was interesting, it was intense. And there were people who really wanted to be a part of it, who gave me advice, and who helped me get Ashesi going. In fact, Ashesi was incubated here. in the IBD program. So this organization with this mission started as a project in a class here that brought my colleagues and I, 4 of us, to Ghana to do the feasibility studies and to do the business planning for this. And so what we do is educate a new generation of ethical entrepreneurial leaders in Africa. Now, there's a very important thing that I learned at Haas, which is the how to get things done is extremely important. I just described to you why I'm doing what I'm doing, hoping to transform a continent. And I've described what I'm doing, educating leaders. But the how I do it is extremely important. And so I was here for 2 years, and I would say that one of the most important lessons I learned was the importance of institutional culture, the importance of the decisions that people make on a daily basis and the actions that people take on a daily basis. That this is absolutely crucial. That performance is not just about rewarding a result, but rewarding the behaviors that we want to see. That this idea, the saying that the end justifies the means, is not true. That the truth is that the means determine the nature of the end. The how is so important. And so we developed this organization that has a way of doing things that I would say is extremely important. Scholarship, leadership, and citizenship, and what each of those things mean for us as individuals working on this project of a renaissance on a continent. And we've come a long way. So let me just describe to you how Ashesi started. It started with a feasibility study and a business plan and a faculty that joined an advisory council to help me develop curriculum and all of that. And it started with one of my colleagues here joining me as co-founder to go to Ghana to rent a home and renovate it for academic work with 30 students. That's how we started, really small, even though we were talking about a really big vision. And it's taken us a long time to get to where we are. We now have a campus of our own, purpose-built. It's absolutely a stunning site and a great environment for our students. But the hardware is not the most important thing that we've done. The most important thing that we've done has to do with the institutional culture, the culture of our student body, the culture of my colleagues who work with me in Ghana, educating students from all over the continent. Our students developed an honor system that they manage themselves, where they've said to each other and to us, they will not tolerate dishonest behavior, that they will live, that their word means something, and it means something good, that they will become a force for good on a continent. And it has really stunned the country, the idea that students can be trusted to take exams without proctoring because they're honest, because they'll hold each other accountable. This is important. This is a long way towards achieving our vision. We've touched individual lives. Students who have grown up in rural villages or who've grown up in slums, who have been the first in their village or the first in their family to go to college, and who are making very deep change now as alumni. A student body that is engaging a community around us, so that we're tutoring kids in primary schools. a student body that is Pan-African now, and that will become more and more Pan-African as we go. Our freshman class this year was 25% non-Ghanaian. Within the next 5 to 10 years, that number will increase to between 30 and 50%. So a truly Pan-African institution with a global reach, with people from all over the world connected to us, and an engagement in high schools. So Ashesi is really not just about the institution that we create for ourselves, but an institution that we create for the world. And that is engaged with the world around it. That we're always looking, as we say at Haas, beyond ourselves. This is how far we've come. And I get to now live a life where every day I see people who've gone to college at Ashesi who are making a very big difference in the world. They are helping develop banking systems for the poor who are unbanked. They're building mobile money systems. They're running orphanages. They're running schools. They're working in banks and telecom, but they're doing it in a way that stands apart. And in a country where 50% of college graduates are unemployed, we have 100% placement in jobs because of the quality of what we're doing, because of the excellence of what we're doing. But like Haas, the excellence that we aim for and that we're executing is excellence with heart. That it is not just about us. It is about the world. It is about Africa. And so here we are. We've just completed the first decade of Ashesi's mission, and we're launching into the second decade. And I'll just describe to you very briefly where we think we're going, and then I'll stop, and hopefully mostly we'll spend our time just having a conversation about what I'm doing and how things are going in Africa. I would say that our first decade was really a story of innovation. And most people, when we think about innovation, we think about imagination. We think about thinking outside the box. But actually, innovation requires more than that. It requires courage. So I would say that our first decade has been about the courage to imagine in the first place, the courage to think we can change the world, the courage to think we can start a university that not only builds people's intellect, but that touches their character, that touches their soul. It's been about the courage to act, because just imagining, if we don't act, is just a dream. Dreams are nice, they're useful, and a lot of things start with dreams. But innovation requires an act. It requires an action. And that also requires courage. And it's been about the courage to persist in the face of difficulty that inevitably shows up when one acts. This has been our first decade, and I think our second decade is going to be more of the same, more of the courage to imagine, the courage to act, and the courage to persist in the face of difficulties that I know will come. We are now actively engaged in developing an engineering program, design buildings, we're designing curriculum, and the goal is to build an engineering program with core strengths in design and systems thinking that educates people that will build solutions for Africa, from large-scale infrastructure projects to low-cost solutions for our markets. We're going to engage in economics to build a pipeline school with a strong emphasis on quantitative reasoning, and really learning from the experience of other parts of the world that have educated some phenomenal economists who are changing their parts of the world. And finally, engage with strengthening the rule of law in Ghana and around Africa. This is what our next decade is going to be. It's going to be a lot of work. There are going to be good times and difficult times, but I believe that we can accomplish all of these things, and that we're going to double our impact in our corner of the world. So this is what I'm doing. It's been, I think, it's been a very gratifying experience. I think that I'm a really lucky person to be able to live the life that I live today. I'm a really lucky person to have been able to come to Haas, to be in a community that is so engaging, and that is so engaged, and that is so entrepreneurial, and that could look at somebody with a crazy dream and say, that is an amazing dream. How can we help? So I'll stop there, and we'll, I think, introduce my most recent IBD project. I told you that Ashesi started with an IBD project, and last year we had our most recent one. Actually, we've had about 9 groups come out from Haas to work with me in Ghana on a variety of things as we've built Ashesi. And so thank you all very much, and thank you guys.
So I would like to invite up Flora and Melissa and Nick and Amir. They are the student team that has helped most recently. So why don't you come up? And I understand...
Can we switch this off?
You yeah, we sure can.
Okay.
Well, in the near term, we can put some paper on it, but... Good. Great. That'll work.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Patrick. So my name is Nick Massioli. I'm a second-year MBA in the full-time program. And as we were just introduced, we were part of the team that was in Ghana this past spring. We did a semester-long consulting project for them as part of the International Development Program. And what we focused on was really helping them figure out how they move from an organization that's been around for 10 years and has seen significant and substantial growth, but has really been, in kind of a startup phase, and how they move culturally as well as how they develop the talent internally in order to achieve all of the ambitious goals that they have for the next 10 years. So I think we're happy to talk more about this in the Q&A session, but we're going to try to get that started with a couple of questions here for Patrick, and then just open up to more general conversation.
Good evening, Patrick. Great to see you again. My question is a fairly broad one. What aspects of your MBA experience at Haas have you utilized in leading Ashesi to become the organization that it is today?
Well, a couple of things. The first one I've talked about, which is that the means are very important. that institutional culture is absolutely critical. That you hire smart people, but you hire smart people that have the right character and the right values, and you reward behaviors. You don't just reward an outcome, you reward the behaviors that you want to see. And you communicate very clearly and consistently and a lot about what your values are, and really try to get people to take ownership for it. So I would say this is probably the most important lesson. The second might not come as a surprise to anybody here, is that even for a social enterprise like what I'm doing, business planning is extremely important. Financial planning is very important. And so we set this up as a project that we wanted to be self-sustaining long-term in Africa. And this means a number of things, right? There's the building the intellectual capital, there's building the civic capital, but there's also building an economic engine, the financial capital, and the financial model around this institution, which I think has been extremely important. So just to give you an example, a very concrete example of why this is so important, we decided that this institution was going to be self-sustaining on the basis of tuition. That we were going to use philanthropy to start it and to start new programs. We were going to use philanthropy to support poor students who needed their tuition paid for, but that we were going to charge tuition for those families that can afford an education, and that this was important because then we would know that financially this institution could live for a very long time. To date, we have raised a total of $15 million in cash in philanthropy and debt financing to get to where we are. How much would you guess we've raised in tuition to date? 10 years in Africa. Any takers? 3 million, 1 million? 1 million every year. So that's close. We've raised $15 million in tuition to date. So the African capital around Ashesi has matched philanthropic capital around it. And this is in a build-up phase. This is not steady state, right? And it's extremely important to have built this economic engine because this is what's going to keep the institution going. And then, there's going to be a time when we're going to have some alumni who are quite wealthy, I hope, and who will give back so that, steady state is going to be an institution that has a very strong economic engine and that will survive its founder.
Hi, Patrick. So we as a student team here at Haas and also many other IBD teams that have preceded us have had the privilege of going out to Ghana and working with you. Why is it that you keep on coming back to the IBD team, and what value have the teams been able to deliver for Ashesi? or why do you... Specifically this.
Well, I know a good thing when I see it, right? Okay, so, I came to business school to manage my fear, right? And I came to business school to learn a little bit about finance and organizational behavior and other things so that I could go start something. And then I encountered a business school that did all of that, but also actually incubated my project. There's just this brain thrust here that is phenomenal. And they helped me start it. Why not help me keep it running? So I have found it really helpful to have teams come and have concentrated time with us to help me think through strategy, to help me think through the business modeling for the next academic programs, to help me think through brand studies, or for those of you who are not business types, reputation. And, it's just this incredible intellectual capacity that is part of my network. And because I came here, I'm smart enough to know a good thing when I see it and know how to leverage it. That's why I keep coming back. It's very, very useful to Ashesi. And I keep saying that a renaissance in Africa will depend on African leadership, enlightened African leadership. And part of that enlightened African leadership will be a leadership that embraces different ways of seeing and embraces the rest of the world, and that invites others in the world to work with us as equal partners. And that's what I'm doing with IBD.
Well, we love being there, and we're hopeful that other folks will have the opportunity to continue to do so in the future. future.
I'm sure there will be others.
And our last question before we open it up, what advice would you have for current Haas students, either personal or practical, who are interested in becoming social entrepreneurs?
Social entrepreneurship is just like any entrepreneurship. In fact, I think all entrepreneurship is social in a way. I think that you should just go for it. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. I was afraid of getting started, and I asked myself, well, what is it I'm afraid of? And the answer was, well, I'm afraid of failing. And then I realized, well, if I don't start, then I failed anyway. And I think that a lot of social entrepreneurs actually all entrepreneurs face this moment where you have to sort of pick up the courage. You've already had the courage to imagine something, right? Now you need to have the courage to act, and you need to know it's going to get hard, and you need to have the courage to persist. And believe me, things have been very difficult on this project, especially in the early days. When you do something completely different, you're often doing it in an environment where there's a performance horizon, really, actually, that all organizations have, that all individuals have, that all societies have, right? And different societies and different organizations have different horizons that they see. And when you're an entrepreneur and you're sort of pushing up against that horizon, it's difficult to find people who will join you to do it. If you pierce the horizon, sometimes you'll have a reflex from the others around you to grab you and pull you back to a place that they understand. That's a difficulty that you'll encounter. There will be difficulties around financing, getting the capital to get things done. You just need to persist. So that's my advice. Courage.
Up to the floor. I will ask you to use the microphones here because we are capturing this in video for our video room. And one other quick announcement. I know some of our evening weekend students have to get back to their classes, so if you do have to leave, we will understand. Please, sir.
Hi, my name is Jason Lee. I'm a second-year full-time MBA student. Thanks so much for coming. I really admire your vision and what you've done to see that at least start to happen. My question was around the thinking about the challenges of keeping the graduates from your university in the African continent,
right,
as that's a critical piece of seeing this transformative vision happen.
Right.
What steps are you taking to make that happen when I'm sure there's a lot of temptation to seek lucrative careers outside of the continent and send that money back to their families and friends?
There are a couple of things that we have to do and that we're doing. One is, again, institutional culture, having a student body that has a real sense of mission, and encouraging that, so that in their hearts they care. And the second is just pragmatic. People will stay if they can find good jobs, if they can find rewarding careers. And so we've made career development a very important part of what we do. All of our students get jobs or graduate school placements within 6 months, and 95% of our graduates are staying in Africa because of these two things: having a sense of purpose, a sense of mission, a sense of gratification from being there and making a difference, but also making sure that they do in fact have those opportunities, those jobs that will keep them there.
Patrick, I'm so glad you were able to make it. I've been anticipating you being here. My name is Amari Bidian, and I'm also a second year. And my question is around your journey, your personal journey, and your whole thought process around wanting to start this university. I know it started before you even got to Haas.
Right.
And can you talk a little bit about that, and then how you came to the decision that you were the person to do this? And and you talked about coming to Haas to build that confidence. And how were you able to build that confidence and actually realize that?
Right, okay. My first idea was to go back to Ghana and start a software company. That's what I was in the software industry, and that seemed like the natural thing to do. And then I went back to visit and realized that there were students studying computer science, writing code on paper, and not using computers. It's funny, it's sort of like learning how to play soccer by drawing soccer balls. It doesn't really work. But it was a real wake-up moment for me, because I realized that it would be really difficult to do a successful software enterprise there. But I was having all these other conversations with friends and family, where we were taking different problems and asking, why is this the way it is, and just keep drilling down, why. And leadership seemed to be a fundamental problem. Leadership as defined by the people in positions of influence across our society. The decisions that we're making, they were just accepting the status quo, or they were corrupt, or they didn't care, etc. And so I got to thinking, well, okay, that's a problem that needs to be solved. How do you solve that? Someone mentioned to me that he felt that Ghanaians who had come to the United States and gone to Ivy Leagues and other places who had returned were thinking and behaving differently. And this was sort of my first hint to go look at the educational system. And as I looked at the educational system, I decided that higher ed was a place to engage for a couple of reasons. One is there was just rote learning going on, which is a problem, and people writing code on paper, that's a big problem. But the second thing is, at the time, the data was showing that about 2% of college-age kids were in college in Ghana. 2%. And the thing about that number is that it's too small, but more importantly, it means that by definition, the people in college will run the country 20, 30 years forward. And so what I was seeing in those classrooms, with classrooms that were so full, the students were spilling out into verandas for lectures, or students who were doing chemistry without doing chemistry labs, etc. I was looking at that, and as an African saying, my goodness, these 20-year-olds, when they're 50, they will be running this continent. And so what I'm looking at is Africa fast forward, and that needs to change. Now, the question of why did I think I should be the person to do it? It took a while, but I'd identified a problem. It wasn't just me, it was me and other people I was talking to who were in that context and who understood. And I had to ask myself, what responsibility do I have towards this? And I eventually said, hey, I really should be part of the solution. So I asked my wife permission. One morning I woke up and I said, hey, what would you say if I said, I'm going to quit Microsoft today, let's go to Ghana, let's do education. And she immediately said, yes, let's do it. And then it wasn't the answer I was expecting. So then I sat up. Wait, shouldn't we think about this? And that's 1.5 years later, I decided to come manage my fear here. Okay, so now your third question was, how did I build the confidence? I think there's just, when you've been through an educational program that's given you a sort of frameworks for looking at problems from different perspectives, and you've engaged these problems with other really smart people, right? And you've sort of figured out a way of looking around corners a little bit in terms of how an organization might be started or how an organization might evolve and what kinds of things you need to be doing. That builds confidence. And people here are always saying, oh, that's just an amazing idea, let's go do it. So that helped.
You share a very similar vision to Fred Swaniker and Chris Bradford through
Yes.
ALA. Could you speak a little bit more to your relationship with ALA as well as other partnerships you've formed both in Africa and out beyond?
Fred started his project a little after I'd started Ashesi, and I got a call in Ghana. He was at Stanford at the time, and said, "I see the problem the same way you do, and I want to start this educational institution in South Africa. What advice can you give me?" And I gave him free advice for what it's worth, and just shared with him some of the things that I'd done, some of the things that were really difficult, things that he should watch out for. And so that's how I first met Fred. And then, he's been to Ghana several times. I've been to South Africa. I'm now on his advisory board. And, I see Fred and Chris as really kindred spirits. I mean, we really do see the problem the same way. And he started this high school that is doing phenomenal work in South Africa. And we're now starting to accept students out of ALA, which is terrific.
Hi. I agree it's an amazing idea what you're doing. And I think it's great that you're building leaders. I have a question about how you're actually building them to manage the world out there in Africa, and how to talk to these people who didn't sign the honor code, and how to deal with the corruption in becoming leaders in the continent.
Right, okay. So that's a big question. There are a number of things that we've done intentionally in our curriculum. We have a leadership seminar series that runs through 4 years. And it's a series that starts with a seminar on great leadership and the challenges of leadership. And so they study leaders that have done really well, leaders that have not done so well. And they reflect on what kinds of leaders that they want to be as individuals. Part of that first seminar includes a module that brings alumni into the classroom to share real-world cases of ethical dilemmas that they've had to confront in the real world, in Ghana, and how they're dealing with it, with these problems. Actually, not just share the answers, but to have students engage these cases and think them through with alumni. The second seminar has to do with the organization of the good society, the rule of law, rights, and so there's a lot of readings and discussions around that. The third seminar is how do you organize the economy of the good society. And they're reading everything from Karl Marx to Adam Smith and in between, and really trying to grapple with this question of what kind of economic system creates the most opportunities for the most people. How do you deal with issues of economic justice and so on. And then the fourth seminar is about servant leadership. And it's really the lab, if you will, for the previous 3 seminars, right? So they actually go out and they do community service as part of that seminar and write about it. And so there's a very active, proactive engagement with students around this question of leadership. And we're asking them and challenging them to form their own opinions about what kinds of leaders are good for the world and what kinds of leaders that they want to be. Okay, so this is how we're dealing with it. But outside of the curriculum, it's also all the things that we do outside of the classroom. The honor system is something that they came up. I mean, we challenge them to think about taking ownership for Ashesi's mission and our posture for integrity. And it took them 2 years, actually, of debate to decide that they wanted to institute an honor system on campus. I mean, this is something that they did in a thoughtful way. And they've also decided that freshmen are not automatically on the honor system. The freshmen come to Ashesi, they spend a whole year not signed on to the honor system, and in their sophomore year, then they come together as a class and make a decision. But it gives us a year where the freshman class is engaged with the rest of the institution, with the upper class students, with the faculty, with the administration, and with each other, also grappling with this question, and then making a decision for themselves. And I think when people decide for themselves, it's more real than if the decision has been made for them, right? So that's how we're dealing with it, is we're sort of, they're engaged in this conversation, but at some point they need to make a decision, right? And it's their decision.
Thank you once again for making time to be here tonight. I know a lot of us in the room have a passion that intersects between education and technology. Right. And I'm curious if you have a point of view about the promise to leverage mobile technologies on the continent of Africa to supplement the traditional curricula that currently exists.
Yes, I do. So I think that technology is a great enabler of many things, including education. Okay, and but it's an enabler on many different levels. It's not just mobile technology. It is photocopiers that enable teachers to print out worksheets for kids. It is just internet connections where they can learn from what others are doing. It is back-end systems that enable teachers to more easily manage grading and tracking grades of students, and that enable school administrators to be more efficient. So I think of technology as something that enables efficiencies in just about every aspect of the educational enterprise. It is an obvious enabler of communication between people, especially across long distances. And I hope that technology will enable us to really ramp up the efforts to enable literacy for a lot of people in a very efficient manner. Those are the things that I think technology lends itself very easily and naturally to. But I think we'll all have to keep exploring about what other things that we might be able to do.
The story has been one of the most inspirational that I've heard lately. So first of all, thank you very much for coming here and sharing it with us.
Thank you.
My question is, how did the continent of Africa receive this project? And more specifically, how has the government in Ghana supported this project, if at all? And also, has this project inspired other people to do similar projects in Ghana or maybe in other countries in Africa?
Right. So how's the continent of Africa receive this project? That's a lot of people. And I've got to say that overall it's been incredibly positive and very, very rewarding. We see, even before we started this project with the first IBD project, talking with corporate Ghana and religious leaders and military and etc., that they, of course, high school students and parents and so on, they express a really strong desire to see an institution like this. So there was a realization that education needed to be better, and what we were suggesting made sense. Having said that, frankly, when we entered and said we were going to educate computer scientists who would also study some philosophy and literature and other things, there was some skepticism about that from sort of the educational establishment, the accreditation system. Why were we teaching history to engineers? Because the model at the time was you only do one subject and you just stay and try. But to their credit, they were willing to listen to us and to allow us to do an experiment and to see if it would work or not. So there was some resistance initially. The honor system, as you can imagine, has also confronted some resistance. People are just sort of incredulous about it. But overall, it's been very positive. And Dean Lyons talked about awards that I've won as the founder of Ashesi. One of the first awards that I won was an award given by the President of Ghana. It's one of the highest honors, the Order of the Volta. And it was interesting that the president, and at the time, Ashesi was maybe 120 students, you know? It was a small institution. And you know, so it was a huge surprise to me. But it told us, my team and I, that what we're doing has gained some attention. And that at the highest levels of this country, it was seen in a positive way. And so that's been sort of the reaction that we've been getting. I think it's very positive. I occasionally get emails from people who are thinking about doing something similar in other countries in Africa. I describe them as being where I was when I was first thinking this through and the fear that I was going through. But I know that there are people who are thinking about this. And I'm optimistic that we will see a replication of what we're doing, if not by ourselves directly, but by other actors who are following our example. Yeah.
I was fortunate to dream of a university in India on top of a train, board a train and execute it. And the first few years were very difficult. So the first year I got the fundraising experience that I had was getting kicked out of about 80 offices of different companies and 80 different ways of insult and won't happen stuff. I want to know your first year of your fundraising experience,
right,
and the fourth year of your first fundraising experience.
All right. Okay. So that's a very good question. I think for social entrepreneurs, it's a very important question. So to be perfectly honest with you, my first $1 million were easy. When I completed Haas with a business plan in hand, went to Seattle, set up a foundation. My wife and I donated. We went to our friends and asked them to donate, and quite a few of them very quickly said yes. And then it got really hard because we sort of looked at the not-for-profit world and mapped on top of that the for-profit model, which is you do a seed round with friends and family, and then you go to venture capitalists and you do multiple rounds of that. And we saw foundations and corporations as the venture capitalists of the not-for-profit world. Actually, they're not necessarily, okay? Venture capitalists are a unique breed. We'll take that kind of risk early on. And so we found that our visits to foundations were not yielding very much. Actually, they were yielding 0, to be precise. And things got really scary, right? So I'll tell you, there was a time when I came within 2 weeks of running out of cash. This is unbelievably stressful. I wasn't getting any sleep. And I remember a couple of meetings I'd had at Haas with my advisory council. I think you were in one of those meetings. And I was talking about how, I really wanted to be working on a university and I didn't like fundraising, et cetera, et cetera. And these guys were telling me, Patrick, focus, you've got to do the fundraising. If you want to be an entrepreneur, fundraising is part of the game. You're not allowed to say you don't like to do fundraising or you don't like to read contracts. You have to. So I had to focus on fundraising, and they were absolutely right. And, I made some phone calls when I was at the 2-week level, and I got some relief from, I called and said, I need help just to keep the lights on. But then I got some really good advice from someone who's become a mentor to me. He said to me, Patrick, what is your business plan? When are you going to break even? And I told him. And he said, how much money do you need to get to break even? And I told him. And he said to me, find 3 people that will commit today to get you to break even. 3 people. Don't try to get 100 people. Don't go running around with foundations and all this stuff. Find 3 people that are going to do this. And that really clarified things for me, because then I suddenly looked at my network and who are the people who are capable within my network, not outside of my network, of being one of the 3 people. And then I went to those people specifically. I didn't get 3 people. I ended up with, I think, 6 or 7 people that divided it up between them. But it was a huge difference to my project to have a handful of people that were on board. They didn't have to give me all the money up front, but they needed to make a 3 to 4 year commitment today so I could get some sleep, because I needed the sleep. Okay? And that's my advice to you. You've got to really focus on fundraising. You've got to find the few key people who are going to get you there. And you also do need to have a plan for sustainability. And it's different for different projects, but you need to build some other economic engine that is supporting the project so that you're not at risk of donor fatigue.
And I think there are 4 people standing, so if we could do 4 more quick questions, then we'll have to call it a night, please.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming to speak with us this afternoon. So there are a lot of nationals who you alluded to that go back to be it Ghana or the continent and really redefine the way that business is done currently. So I wonder if you've focused on having opportunities to really leverage that to develop a network for your students, or even as you as an entrepreneur to really kind of harness that power of your mission and continue to redefine the way business is done currently.
Yeah, absolutely. We try to, first of all, connect our students with those organizations led by the people who agree with our way of doing things and where they will thrive. One of our biggest issues is, someone told me, there's a saying, little drops of water make a mighty ocean. Well, someone told me, Patrick, little drops of water evaporate. and I said, okay, you're right. So I need to make sure my little drops of water are not near a heat source and there's some humidity around them. And so you do need to connect people to the right places, especially as young graduates, where they're not getting too much heat. Okay, so that's what we're doing.
Hi, Patrick. My name is Jerry. My question is about scale. I think hearing your inspiring story, the impatient MBAs in the room want to say, why not 10 Ashesi? Why not 20? Why not 100 Ashesis in Africa? At the same time, I think we see even here in the States that great schools are really hard to scale. So what plans, if any, do you guys have to expand? I know you guys have recently launched like a second site. And what are the challenges that you've seen as part of that process?
Right, so that was me when I was here, Nina and I, let's do 10 Ashesis. And then, once you get to that 2 weeks before you're out of cash, focus. So, no, but more seriously, think about what's going on in the world around us and the things that Haas alumni are doing, or Stanford alumni are doing, or Harvard alumni are doing, Haas, I would say to you that Haas today is having a ripple effect in Africa through the work that Nina and I are doing, right? That is another way of scaling, is impact through the people that come through your organization. And so it's very important that we're educating people who can have that kind of impact. And I know, how do you measure the impact of a graduate who graduates from your school and returns home to Sierra Leone and 2 years later is the head of treasury in a bank? That is very high impact. And so that's one way of looking at it. I should say that, I'm human, and there are times when I allow myself to revisit this question of replication. Don't tell it to my board. But I've not completely sort of given up on the idea of possibly replicating one day. And if I do, I'll be coming back to IBD. It's a different project. So, but we're going to be careful about it, and we need to make sure we have impact through our graduates as well.
Hi, my name is Aisha Taylor. I'm in the full-time program, first year. My question was around the young women in the program. I know that educating girls in Africa has been really difficult in terms of, especially at the primary level as well as high school level for numerous reasons. Are you seeing some of the effects at your university? And if so, what are some of the things that you're doing to combat the issue?
Okay,
Thanks.
all right. So that's a very good question. And when we started, 25% of our students were women, that first pioneer group. And 25% of the applicant pool were women. Today, it's 50% of our freshman classes are women. And it's taken a concerted effort visiting girls' schools and encouraging girls to apply and all of that. In answer to your question, I just want to say that the issue of gender balance is not just about numbers of people. It's more complex than that. And just very quick story, if you'll allow me. In our first year, one of our students, a woman, suggested that we start student government. And we said, well, maybe not student government, can you start some kind of student club? And so they decided, so just to get the experience of voting for leadership and organizing a club, etc. And so they did this, and she ran for president against one other person, a man. And he was a popular guy. And I bet that he was going to win. Okay? My team disagreed with me. They said, Patrick, but it's our idea, everybody knows. I said, no, what? She's going to win. I also bet that deep inside our student body, they all knew that she would be a better leader, right? So we let them do this vote, and sure enough, he won. And then we did a survey, an anonymous survey of all the students. They only needed to indicate if they were men or women, asking questions around perceptions about how visionary this person is, how well they communicated, whether they were a great team player or not, trustworthiness, who would you give your money to keep, etc. And then a proxy question for who would you vote for president. And the proxy question was, if Bill Gates were to come to campus, who would you choose to represent you? And the results were stark, because she blew him away on every metric except two. One was charisma, or popularity. And the second was the proxy question. They would choose him to represent them to Bill Gates. So they were serious. They really did vote for this guy. And then we showed them the data. This was your level of trust for this guy. You would absolutely not give your money to him, etc., etc. You don't think he's a good team player. You don't think he's a good organizer. You don't think blah, 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 blah. But you vote for him for president and you'd have him represent you. Why? And our response, and there was a surprise in there. And the other reason I bet that he would win was we only had 25% women. The surprise for me was that the women disproportionately voted for him. Okay? This blew me. I was surprised. I mean, I think we were all surprised. So we looked at that and said, okay, this is how the leadership seminar series came to be. We said, we need to develop a real leadership seminar and have people be intentional about how they think about leadership. And so we did this, and 4 years later, our student body voted for the first female president of student government in Ghana since independence, in 50 years. And the reason I share this story is because I think it's really, and this was not an education of just the women. We needed to educate the men as well, right? And that's how we deal with it.
Thank you so much for sharing with us this evening, Patrick. I'm inspired by your vision to use education to strengthen rule of law in Ghana and Africa more broadly. I wondered if you could speak a little bit to the new Law and Justice program and specifically the kind of metrics that you plan on using to measure its success in terms of how it transforms broken or underperforming rule of law structures.
Right, okay. I think the metrics are going to be very similar to the metrics we use for all our programs, right? We want to educate inspired leaders. We want to educate people who actually live according to the Ashesi way that I described. If you look at the learning goals for Ashesi, and we have developed a set of 7 learning goals, so that part of the what is a set of attributes and capabilities that we'd want all our graduates to have. And if you read that list, it doesn't include any specific discipline. It's things around ethics and character and so on. And so the law program will be judged the same way. We will not be just teaching the laws of Ghana. We're in Ghana, so it will be the laws of Ghana. We will be teaching a more philosophical approach to the law. So sort of a deeper understanding and appreciation for the purpose of those who are officers of the court and the purpose of the law. And so just think of it as sort of the leadership seminar sort of blown up and deepened for students who have a very specific goal of engaging in public service, who have a very specific goal of engaging with the rule of law, the courts, the parliament, and even political office.
We have to call it an evening. Patrick, you are the embodiment of this institutional culture. We are very proud of all you've achieved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.